The live-action remake of How to Train Your Dragon is out now. So, now that I've seen the movie, what are my thoughts on all of the dragon redesigns? I'll be ranking each and every dragon's redesign on this fancy tier list. And yes, I mean all of the dragons, including some that you might not have known were even in the movie. So, as Gobber the Belt would say, let's get started! First up, we have the Deadly Nadder. Now, I wasn't too sure about the Deadly Nadder's redesign at first, but over time, especially after having seen the movie, I've actually really warmed up to it. Where the original Nadder was quite similar to a chicken, this version feels a lot more dinosaur-like, and looks way more prehistoric, which is definitely quite a different look, but I really dig it. And I absolutely adore the Nadder's new wings. The orange colour and spiky texture along the tips of the wings gives it an almost fiery look that I really like, and think fits the Nadder really well. The only part where I feel like this design suffers a tiny bit in comparison to the original is its tail spikes. They just don't quite look spiky enough to me, but that's very much a nitpick. Overall, I really love this redesign. It's quite different to the original, but I suppose it really is just a realistic version of that design. So in my opinion, the Deadly Nadder belongs in A tier. Next up is the Terrible Terror. I actually really like the Terrible Terror's design here. At first I thought they leaned too much into a chameleon sort of look because of its chameleon eyes, but after actually seeing the movie rather than just relying on this one shot from the trailers, I actually think it's almost the perfect live action redesign for this dragon. I really love how big they made the wings in proportion to the rest of its body, and the textures they gave it all over. Honestly, I think we just needed to see a bit more of this dragon to get more of a feel for it, seeing as a certain very important scene featuring it was removed. Really, I think if it weren't for the chameleon eyes, this would be the perfect redesign for the Terrible Terror. I'm torn between A and S tier, but I think it's going high A tier. And now we have the Monsterous Nightmare. This one is absolutely my favourite of the redesigns. It just looks so menacing and awesome. I honestly have no critiques of this design. I absolutely love its wings, and I adore its menacing crocodilian head. I know a lot of people had problems with the head, wishing it was more similar to the original head shape, and still had its underbite, and I definitely get where they're coming from, but I just think it looks so damn cool that I'm okay with them taking this creative liberty, even if it's not super accurate to the original design. And I absolutely love the way it moves, adapting the way the original moved but making it much weightier, while still having that nimble agility to it. This one, in my opinion, is an easy S tier. And now we have the Night Fury. Rather than a sleek and menacing creature, this model feels a lot more bulky, as though it was more closely based on its model from How to Train Your Dragon 3, rather than the one from the movie that they're actually remaking. I feel like the biggest problem with this design is just how boxy they made the head, killing that sleek, streamlined and menacing look of the original, making him look far too bulky to be a Night Fury. All problems I have with this model in How to Train Your Dragon 3 as well. I do actually really like the body shape though. I feel like that's pretty spot on, but my big problems with this design are, like I said, with its head, but also with its wings. I really don't like the changes they made to Toothless's wing shape, and especially to his movements as he flies. It looks too much like he's sort of clumsily flailing his wings around, in a manner that would most certainly not keep him airborne, in stark contrast to how Toothless flew in the original, gracefully and controlled. I do love how it has some slight blue iridescence on the scales, since Toothless's model in the first movie did have some slight hints of blue, so I think that's a really neat bit of consistency. I think they were so close to gold, but just played it a bit too safe, and leaned too far into the wrong aspects of his design. I think this one's got to go in B tier. It could have been worse, but it could have definitely been much better. And now we've arrived at the Red Death. I've heard very mixed opinions on this one. So, what do I think about the Red Death's redesign? I think that in terms of the design itself, the original Red Death absolutely takes the cake. It just looks way more unique, but that this design works far better for the medium of live action. First off, they heavily upsized it here, which, while not needed for the original, definitely works well for the spectacle of live action. I really like the double forked tongue they gave it, and the extra red all around its face and head crest, making the name Red Death make more sense here, compared to the mostly green original. I also really like how big they made the nasal horn, and how it blends into the rocks around it. I do wish they made the wings a bit bigger in proportion to the rest of its body, which is a big problem I have with a few of the designs coming up later on this list, but it's nowhere near as egregious as some of those are. So overall, while not as good as the original, it definitely works better for the medium of live action. The Red Death's going in A tier, but I can definitely understand why others might rate this one a bit lower. Next up is the Hideous Zippleback. When they first revealed all of the Dragon's redesigns, the Zippleback was actually by far my favourite, but this one is one of the few designs that I actually liked less after seeing the movie. I feel like it's lost a lot of the charm and originality that the original Zippleback had, mainly around the body area. It feels less like a slithery serpent, and more like that of a generic two-headed dragon. I don't really have much to say about this redesign. It's not bad, but it really is just a blander, more boring version of the Zippleback. I'm torn between B and C tier, but I think I'll put this one in C tier, but I could go either way. The gruesome Gronckle. Unfortunately, my opinions on the Gronckle redesign haven't changed much from when I first saw it. I'm just really not a fan of this one. Beyond the generally rounded tail and vague shape, it just really doesn't look like a Gronckle to me. They even changed its colour to a greyish blue, which certainly doesn't help with that. They definitely upped the pugginess with this one, especially around the face. And they smoothed down the bumps all over its body, making it even less Gronckle-like. I'm definitely okay with them changing the ears on its head to spikes, since I'm not sure if they could have made that look good in live action, and it makes a lot more sense as something for fish legs to hold on to when flying. The groundwork for a great Gronckle redesign is definitely here, but it just doesn't lean into the Gronckle look enough. Like it's trying too hard to be its own thing, instead of a redesign for the Gronckle. D tier. And now we've arrived at the background dragons. Dragons that did appear in the background of the movie, but were never the main focus, and could be easy to miss, consisting of the Skrill and the Rumblehorn. So, let's start with the Rumblehorn. They certainly upped the bulky rhino aspects of this design. One of the most apparent changes is how they moved the nasal horn a bit further up the dragon's head, and moved the head spikes down a bit, as well as moving them to point out more. I do really wish they kept the red face. It gave such a nice contrast to the rich green body, which, might I add, is now a very pale green body. Though I do like that they at least had some shiny blue all over its backplates and horn tips. But the biggest problem here is that this is the first of the dragons to severely suffer from the undersized wings. And of all the dragons, I think this is the one that gets it the worst. This thing is by far the heaviest and bulkiest dragon, aside from the Red Death of course. So why in Odin's name would they make its wings so terribly small and flimsy looking? There's no way in Helheim that this thing could actually stay in the air with those tiny little wings. I think I'm gonna give the Rumblehorn a C tier. I definitely don't hate this design, but it really is just a more boring version of the Rumblehorn. But next up is a redesign I do hate. And now one of the most deadly dragons in the world, the Skrill. The Skrill is easily my favourite dragon of the original series, no question. It's so sleek, spiky, powerful, and of course, electric, with the metallic spines running all down its back, and massive wing claws used to attract lightning, like a living deadly lightning rod. This thing looks like it's built to be an unstoppable killing machine, agile and powerful. But here... what did they do to it? Now, a quick disclaimer. I generally try to keep this channel quite positive and uplifting, while still giving criticism where it's due. However, I do have somewhat strong opinions on this redesign. So, if you'd like to keep that more upbeat, positive vibe going for the remainder of this video, feel free to skip to this timestamp, and I'll see you there with my overall thoughts. Now, for those of you who stayed, in my humble yet incredibly correct opinion, this thing is an absolute abomination and a complete and utter disgrace to the Skrill. This thing does not deserve to share a name with the Skrill. They made it look like an overweight, deformed, mutated Scuttleclaw. This chicken-winged, big-bellied, stubby-tailed disaster is an absolute joke in comparison to the Skrill. A dragon that had so much potential for a realistic redesign, but no! They just turned one of the most powerful and memorable dragons into something that would fit right in at Volker's sanctuary. Even the toy looks better than this pathetic, puny purple peanut. The cheap plastic figurine! How did they manage that? Gone are the metallic back and claw spikes used to attract lightning, replaced with tiny, frail little rose thorns. This is supposed to be a dragon capable of going toe-to-toe with a Night Fury. This thing would be lucky to take down a napping hot purple. This horrific abomination is an absolute disgrace, and does not deserve to share a name with the Skrill. F tier. So overall, I'm not too big a fan of this redesign. It would be quite a charming design of its own, but doesn't really fit very well as a redesign for the Skrill. Its gorgeous crown of spikes is now more like that of a crest with some thin, fragile needles coming out of it. And it, let's just say, doesn't exactly have the right body shape for a nimble and agile dragon. They turned this sleek and speedy dragon into one that looks far too heavy to actually fly, especially because it's yet another victim of the tiny undersized wings. This one's gotta go in F tier. So, that is my ranking of every live action Dragons redesign. Remember, these are all just my opinions. So, do you agree? Disagree? What changes would you have made? Feel free to make your opinions known in the comments. Just be sure to keep it civil. And, if you're looking for more How to Train Your Dragon discussion, or really anything dragon related, feel free to join my Discord server, a place packed with fellow dragon lovers. Thank you so much for watching. I put a lot of effort into this one. So, if you choose to return, I'll see you next time.